podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn. Welcome to How We're the Podcast, and you join us in between our Lens and Wrens French double header ahead of our season opener against Ipswich Town in just less than a fortnight now. And we decided to schedule a news roundup before we started looking ahead to our final pre-season game. And on the day we plan to meet up, and here's peek behind the curtain, we're recording on Monday, it all decides to kick off on the transfer front. So we might be looking into our crystal ball at times and talking about something that you already know is confirmed. So please get in touch and tell us how far we were from the mark in all of those cases, no doubt. But luckily, I've got three gentlemen with me who all have their tarot cards ready to go and tell us how it will all play out. And first up, we have the smooth tones of Andrew Smithson. Hello, mate.
Hello, Mara. I've got my tarot cards out, and my prediction is this podcast will overrun and we'll talk about all sorts of random stuff that's got nothing to do with Sunderland. So that's what the cards are telling me.
Well, at least make it difficult for yourself. Bloody hell. I mean, Christ. Tell us the lottery numbers or something like that. Not something that's already nailed on to happen. But yeah. So yeah, Andrew, but it is all kicking off. But just quickly, looking back to Lens, it was an impressive performance, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. There was lots of positives to talk about, Chris. It was just a decent game of football to watch. But yeah, on that evidence, the squad's shaping up nicely. I think the players are looking sharp, looking ready to go. And, you know, you've always got to take things with a pinch of salt in pre-season, but certainly the clues are there to kind of give us an indication, and we've just beaten a quality side, so why wouldn't we be confident?
Yeah, absolutely. And I noticed you said turret as well. Oh, tarot. You said tarot, I said turret. So I don't know which one's the posher one or the right one or the wrong one.
Well, I was watching Live and Let Die with James Bond Bond. He wasn't sat on the sofa with us. There you go. There's the first prediction about things going off topic. I was watching the Live and Let Die film with James Bond last week, and that was all about tarot cards.
A bit of an Alan Partridge moment there. But anyway, next up, we have Jonny Hawley. Hello, Jonny.
Hello, Chris. I'm afraid I've not been rubbing shoulders with such esteemed company as Andrew has. I haven't got any stories of MI6 super agents to bring you, but I think I could talk about football.
Well, to be fair, in your vest there, you look like our international man of mystery. Looking all cool there, mate.
Yeah. Me and Austin Powers, we've got exactly the same level of charisma. Don't you worry about that.
Yep, listeners already know that, mate. But anyway, and last but not least, it's a pleasure to introduce Ian Bendelow. Hello, Ian.
Hello. I've never sat next to James Bond on the sofa before. I have, however, stood next to Timothy Dalton at a bar once. And but if he was sitting next to me on the sofa, I'd have said, "How good were we against Lens?" Because we absolutely dog walked him, didn't we? It was brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, we'll touch on that because I started the conversation with Andrew. But Ian, how impressed with you? And also, I mean, there was lots of plus points we would go for, but I was we've made one signing, and I was really impressed with him.
Yeah, it was brilliant, wasn't it? There is absolutely no reason not to get carried away in my book with that kind of performance. We are now, how many days till the first game it is, and there's that sort of feeling in the pit of my stomach of anxiety and excitement all kind of mixing into one. So you've just got to enjoy it, because we are embarking on what is going to be an incredible season, hopefully, fingers crossed. So yeah, just excited, and the team have shown from York until today that they're focused and ready, and they really want this. So onwards and upwards.
Yep, I've just made a note of that, Ian. That we're going to clip that. It's an incredible season, quote Ian. The 10 10th of August, we'll clip that and we'll make sure we'll play that during the middle of the season if it's not an incredible season. But Jonny, the performance, it's funny because, and it was funny listening to Gav start the podcast saying, basically, we don't take any notice of pre-season friendlies and how we play unless it's good, and then we will take notice of it. We'll ignore all the rubbish bits and we'll take all of the positives. But seeing a performance like that, it does kind of just make you want the season start tomorrow, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's you could just encompass all of football fandom into that one sort of massive contradiction there that we all hold in our heads. Like you say, it doesn't mean anything until it does when you're good. So obviously this performance is going to be the template for the rest of the season. And, like Ian said, we're going to have an incredible season based entirely on this Lens game. But, it is, joking aside, it's one of those things, isn't it, where as much as it is a bit of a cop-out, the way that we kind of dismiss everything unless it's something that we want to take notice of, I do think that there's a bit of logic behind it, because if you've had the bad performances, a lot of the time it'll be because players haven't come back and joined up with the squad yet, or people aren't fully fit, and, you've got new signings who haven't bedded in yet. So there are legitimate footballing reasons to put in a bad performance or two in pre-season. I mean, you saw that last season from us as well. I mean, 3-0 against Hearts and some of the other games that we lost as well. And then come the season, we're hitting the ground running, we're beating West Ham 3-0 and we're off and running, we're away. But with a good performance like we put in against Lens, I think the standard of the opposition makes a big difference as well, because that, again, it's pre-season, so everyone's not putting in 110% effort necessarily, but that's a good team. They finished second in Ligue 1 last season. They won the Domestic Cup. They're going to be in the Champions League this season. So it's a pretty fair yardstick to use, I think, to judge where you're at as a team. And obviously, winning 2-0 in a pre-season friendly is not going to win you any silverware or out like that.
Whoa. Whoa. We got a trophy made of coal, mate.
Sorry, yeah, of course. It is going to win you silverware. It is going to win you silverware, but it's not going to qualify
get the trophy cabinet scruffy.
It's not going to qualify you for the next season or anything like that, though, because we've already done that. But yeah, putting in a performance like we did, it's good because you can start to see relationships developing between players. I think that's more than anything. That's the positive that I would be reading into things. I think Mounier played his first minutes, didn't he? And he's starting to, put the building blocks in place for his Sunderland career. You've got Talby and Isidore linking up for the second goal, which I think is a good sign, and it's something that we wanted to see from our forward players a bit more last season, particularly Talby being able to stretch his legs and get in behind and show off his pace and start to use that. So these are things that you can pick out and take away and go, look, these are things we want to see during the season anyway. So what better time than to start seeing them than right now? You want to be seeing things coming together, and I think it's
one of the benefits of having a really settled squad, isn't it? And everyone's kind of a little bit nervous about the lack of signings or otherwise. But really, the big benefit is that this isn't about players learning how to play with each other. This is about players basically picking up from where they've left off in May. There isn't any learning process. There isn't right, what's this guy doing? What's this guy doing? The only person is Mounier, who's come in and said that him and Trey Hume have got a really good understanding already, which is fantastic. So I think that's the biggest benefit for me, is that we've got a bunch of lads here that know each other's games inside out, and we'll be able to hit the ground running and come mid-switch away.
Just touching on that topic of stability, Ian, I've wrote a little bit in today's editorial, which I'm sure you've all read over and over again because it was such a good article, of course. But I did mention in there, and I mentioned it on a previous pod, that, and again, it ties in with that stability that you've just talked about. I think there's a real opportunity when it comes to the Premier League this season, because I'm not sure there's ever been a Premier League like there will be in the one to come. You talked about the potential of an incredible season earlier on. And if you look at the makeup of the Premier League, the traditional top six has been smashed to pieces. You look at where they are at the moment, they're all starting from scratch. They're all trying to rebuild in some way, shape or form, other than maybe Arsenal. They're of course, the most stable out of that lot. But then you look underneath there, and even some of the more established ones, or ones who did last season, are rebuilding. I mean, all those ridiculous stats about how many new managers there are and that who's the longest serving manager. I think Regis Labus is the 4th in the Premier League, something like that. I mean, Ian, there's a real opportunity and I would like to think we're one of those clubs, but for one of those clubs who've been knocking around mid-table for a few years, or the likes of ourselves who are hoping to kick on, there's a big opportunity there. There's a hole to fill, isn't it?
There really is. Every single Sunderland fan should ask themselves the question, what are you scared of? And every single Sunderland fan should ask the question of the players, what are the players scared of? And the answer to the latter will be absolutely nothing, because you've got a guy like Granit Xhaka in there who's going to instill the level of professionalism and level of belief that we all know he's done over the last 12 months. So hopefully that will then inform the first question, what are we all scared of? And the answer should be nothing. I don't mind admitting in August 2025, when I was looking at the fixture list, I was thinking, God, we've got the Mags coming up in December. This is going to be tough. Like, I look at them now and I just think, bring it on, man. Bring it on. And I think we should be thinking that about, the vast majority of the teams in this league. And you're thinking about some of the, the leading lights in Man City and Arsenal and stuff like that, the confidence that we can go and give them the game, because we took a point off every single team in the league, bar was it Fulham last season. So we should have that confidence, and please, everybody else, keep going on about second season syndrome, going on about the European competition. I was reading, I've heard it since the last podcast. I've heard it, a few times on Talk Sports. I've been reading the 442 season preview. They're talking about how we're going to struggle and all that. And I'm just like, guys, keep writing this off. Please keep writing this off. Please, Coventry City fans, keep thinking that we're a pub team that somehow got lucky. Leeds United just, they just can't get over the fact that we've got Europe, and they just seem to want to prove this point. And as for the Mags, I mean, they're just in a death spiral of pain, and they're just lashing out against us. So everybody, tell us we're going to do rubbish this season. Tell us we're going to get relegated, because, the truth is, Sunderland fans, we might be scared of, our own inward thoughts, but we all know deep down we're a good side. So you're absolutely right, Chris. We can do something special this season. We really can. Whether that's on the European stage or the Premier League. Let's just wait and see what happens over the next 9 months or so.
Yeah. And in the same way as people writing us off, I really hope people keep tipping Coventry to do really, really well, because I just find it ridiculous that people are doing that. People are expecting Coventry to have a season like we did last season.
Can you show some respect, please, and give them the full name of Frank Lampard's Coventry City, please, and thank you.
Absolutely. And they just think he's going to do some sort of miracle this season, but we'll see how it plays out. But anyway, let's get into some of the news. And the big one, let's do some kind of club news first, because there's lots of transfer news to get through. We'll do that all in one chunk at the end, or, after we get past this bit, because there's a new club account that everyone has to sort out. And it came out a few days ago, the news that everyone had to do this. It's one login to rule them all. So apparently it pulls everything together in terms of your ticket and your merchandise and anything else you've got, I suppose, with subscriptions and things with the club. And apparently it does everything. But it seems like it's causing quite a few issues. And on Monday, as we record, there's a big queue at the ticket office with lots of people trying to sort out various issues linked to that and other things, ticket-wise, as well as obviously getting tickets for the game on Saturday, which I think we'll touch on before we finish. But Andrew, it all just seems a bit of a mess, doesn't it? That communication, we were talking beforehand that, we were trying to piece it together between us, almost saying, oh, well, I've heard this bit, or I've read this bit, or I didn't see that bit, and some bits are hidden away here or there. And you wonder, for those people who maybe struggle with technology or whatever, that actually you wonder how they're going to read all the information or gather all the information. If, we like to think we're not, tech experts. At least I'm going to speak for myself, but I like to think I know how to get my way through it. But even I'm going, I'm going to have to work this out. Just seems a bit messy, doesn't it, Andrew?
It does. And unfortunately, the timing of it, I think, is adding an extra layer of frustration for people, because, as you say, we've got a friendly coming up this weekend. And at present, I can't get in to sort my tickets for that, which actually, no, I think I can find a workaround, but there shouldn't need to be a workaround. It should be just an easy few clicks of a few buttons. The other thing which is going to cause panic is, I believe, the Europa League Cup scheme is opening this week, and fans are going to be asked to register for that. Now, again, if you can't get your account sorted in time, people are going to get upset and distressed at the possibility of missing out on what's going to be like a historic group of games. In a perfect world, this new account business could have done with being launched maybe a few weeks earlier, because as you say, we've now got queues at the ticket office. I've logged a request via Ask SAFC, but I dare say my request is just one on a list of hundreds, possibly thousands. Had this started a few weeks prior, or had this process been easier to navigate, we wouldn't now have this worry. I've seen on social media people are talking about having to book time off leave so that they can travel down and speak to somebody in person at the ticket office, because they've not had any luck so far trying to do it online, or they can't get answers on the phone. It's not good. My advice would be everybody checks out what they need to do, because I think before hitting record, Ian might have mentioned that he'd actually done all of this and it worked fine. If I've understood correctly.
Well, yeah, that's yeah. So what I would say is respectfully to every Sunderland fan listening to this, you are stupider than you think. And I thought that I needed to do all this sort of stuff. I thought, hold on a second, I've not got my email here. Where's my email from the club? Where's my instructions? And then I realised I'd actually done it already. But I'm not quite sure why I've done it already or how I've done it already. But my advice to anyone is you do need to apply a bit of thought to all of this. Now, whether that will get you to where you want to be is another question entirely. But don't expect this to just fall into your lap and it to be sorted, because otherwise you're going to find there's going to be problems further down the line when it comes to things like Europa League ticketing or home games or what have you. I'm thinking of, I mean, everyone's a bit like this, aren't they? When they see this kind of thing come up from the club, and you automatically think about 5 people in your Rolodex in your mind of who's going to go absolutely off the deep end about this. And I can think, not naming any names in my life, about who's going to have issues with this. But it will happen. So you do need to really kind of actually engage with what you're being asked to do here, because short-term pain for long-term gain, certainly.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, go on, Andrew.
I was just going to say, in my particular circumstance, so yeah, for example, some people have already done it and hadn't realised. They'll need to double check. My situation, without going into the specifics, at present there is no way of me sorting it myself, and I'm reasonably tech savvy. It's not, I don't believe that at the moment it's an issue with me. It's an issue behind the scenes that I cannot access. Basically, what's happened is, now when I use my login details, I end up in my brother-in-law's account. There's no way for me to change his contact details. There's no way for me to get back into my old account. There's various ways I've tried to sort it, and I keep getting blocked due to things that are beyond my control. The problem with all of this is, my brother-in-law's a casual fan who goes to a few games as and when he can get tickets. I've got a season card. I can't currently see that on any screens. That's not available for me to view at the moment. So yeah, Ian's right. Everybody needs to look and just double check. There'll be plenty of people who are fine and don't need to do much. But for the ones who technology is difficult, or for the ones who are in a situation where they can't physically make those changes because the system won't let them, they're going to have to act. And whenever we talk about the ticket office, I do always like to point this out. Whenever I speak to people face to face, they're always dead canny, bless them. I feel for the poor people in the ticket office. They're going to be getting through plenty of work this week. I don't think it's individuals trying to be difficult. I just think it's a case of we've got tens of thousands of account holders, and the systems in the background just aren't adept enough to cope with what they're trying to get us to do.
Yeah, and I'm stuck in a similar loop where I'm trying to sort out my lad, and it's saying that I'm trying to put his details on, and he's saying he doesn't exist. So then I'm trying to create a new account with the same details, and it's saying he does exist, and I can't do that. So I can't do it either way, and I can't get into his details, which has previous tickets on it. So I don't want to kind of bail out on what was in there. So I'm getting not much response either on that front. But just very quickly, Ian, I just wanted to come back to you because you were at that meeting. You mentioned that pod maybe before we started recording that. You went when the club was saying, look, we're going to do this, and we're just gauging a few fans' response and seeing what's what. One of the big topics on there was communication. And it just seems with everything this summer on this front, even though they were told that that's the biggest thing to get right, it just seems like they've been way off the mark, getting people the information they need for this.
I don't think that's unfair. The problem that the club have got, though, is that there's kind of been 3 or 4 big ticket things which you would ideally only have to do one of each pre-season, or ask the fans to do one of each pre-season. There's a lot to think about. I mean, I certainly kind of have the feeling that, there's a lot. I'm being asked to sort of engage my brain a lot more in relation to things like the ticketing accounts, in relation to the Europa League stuff and all of that. But we are obviously a professional Premier League football club, and we're a big setup and a big organisation. And I think one of the things that was said at the meeting was something along the lines of, actually, despite the fact that we are managing a lot of supporters and a lot of different things around the club, actually the infrastructure in the club needs to be bigger. So they're trying to expand out a lot more and get more people in and more sort of expertise in to help sort these things out. But the communication hasn't been great. It just hasn't been great, and that does need to be sorted out. But I am no I'm no sort of PR expert in that sense. All I can say is, all I could have said at the time was, make sure that you communicate this effectively, and it kind of didn't happen, which is a bit of a shame. But we'll see how this all pans out. It's not the end of the world. It's kind of, I think, once this will all get sorted out. It's just once it does, before it gets sorted out, everyone's like, oh, this is outrageous. But once it does get sorted out, everyone will forget about it and we'll all move on. But it is just a bit painful, really.
Yeah, well, when we're in that Champions League place come Christmas, I'm not sure anybody will still care about what tickets issues there will. That might be still going on then, Andrew.
Well, yeah, I cannot wait until we've got problems sorting tickets out for the Champions League. Fine, I'll if I've got to queue up at the stadium for a bit to sort that out, that's fine. One thing, just whilst we're talking about tickets and ticket officing and the meeting that Ian and myself were at, it's also been announced this week the prices for the Europa League games. Now, from my point of view, I thought the prices were really good. I thought that they've set the prices well, and it's a bit of a shame that the club perhaps aren't going to get the positive PR from that, because it could have easily cashed in on Europa League and made a lot more money out of it. But they've tried to set it at a reasonable price point. But nobody's talking about the pricing, from what I can see, because they're actually getting into the ticket office and signing up for these things is proven to be a hurdle. And that's just, it's such a shame that really the talking point should be, hey, isn't this exciting? Isn't this good that when we're talking about fairly affordable prices? That side of things is always going to be ignored until the infrastructure's in place, sadly.
Well, I mean, Jonny, I'm going to come to you with this next one because it's also on the subject of tickets and it's linked slightly with what Andrew's just said, because an article went up on the club website over the weekend and it was related to Europa League home tickets, but this was for, and I'm looking at the article now, but this was for clients, seasonal clients and premium clients. No mention of fans in that article. Looking at it, slightly bizarrely, there's an offer for a 10% discount for seasonal clients who pick up, and this is all, the premium kind of clientele, I suppose, but there's a 10% discount for those who pick up tickets for all 4 Europa League games. And it's just reading this, they're pushing this at a time when they're trying to charge season card holders an extra wad of money for simply wanting to get a chance to be able to get an away ticket for the Europa League and away tickets in general. I don't know, does this kind of stick in the thought a little bit? Is this just what we should expect, that the club are going for the big paydays when you see how much these are going to pay per game? I mean, you're talking up to 200 quid. I don't know. Is this what we just should expect as we're getting bigger, or should the club be a little bit more on the ball in balancing how they're doing this?
Well, unfortunately, we do have to expect it because it's the way of the modern game, isn't it? If you've got a massive sort of profile boosting opportunity come along, like competing in the Europa League for the first time in donkey's years, well, ever in the current guise, but you know what I mean, then you have to try and take advantage of it, because unfortunately, the landscape being the way it is, everybody else is going to do that, and everyone's in direct competition with each other, and especially with the, all of the different and ever-changing financial regulations that come about, like it was PSR and now it's going to be SCR, squad cost ratio, and all these different rules, and we've got to abide by the UEFA specific financial rules as well that limit our spending that bit more again. You have to try and squeeze every penny out of sort of football related matters that you can. And if we don't do that, like I say, we will start getting left behind, unfortunately, and I don't like it. And if I could wave a magic wand and get rid of that from football entirely, I would do without hesitation, because I don't think it's good for the health of the sport, and I don't think it's a good thing for competitive integrity. And we could sit and talk about this for hours, I think, but unfortunately, yeah, for us as Sunderland fans, at the end of the day, that does mean the club is going to have to try and nickel and dime us at times, because they need the money to be able to compete. And as much as we all hate it and we don't want to see the club, I don't want to use the word exploit because that's far too negative for what I mean, but but the club are they're certainly trying to exploit the opportunities to make money with these hospitality seats and packages. And there was all the stuff with the that Michelin star chef or whoever it was who came into the stadium last season to start doing hospitality packages in different boxes and suites and what have you. It is a bit of a necessary evil. So yeah, I think to be honest, to tie it back to what you were talking about before, and I think Ian, you made a really good point about the communication not being up to scratch, and I think that is why this potentially does stick in the craw a little bit more than it maybe otherwise would. This kind of thing could just slip under the radar, because at the end of the day, it's going to be, in the grand scheme of how many seats there are in the stadium, it'll be a handful of seats that this applies to, and the club has to offer hospitality packages, and it's it's just a thing that has to be done, and people would forget it and move on. But when the general communication of the club has been pretty poor, I think, to be honest, for a long time, really, on sort of fan specific matters like ticketing, like merchandise, all that kind of stuff, then yes, it builds a feeling of a little bit of resentment, I think, among certain people, where you do kind of, you think, all right, so you can get your communication sorted for the stuff where you're gonna rake the money in from the well-off brigade, but when it comes to sorting out our mandatory ticket platform moves, all of a sudden and then that's the attitude that creeps in. Whether that's fully justified or not, that is the way that people are going to think, because people get adversarial when things start impacting them. They just do. Nobody wants to have to faff around sorting the ticketing platform account migration or whatever. They just want to. I just want to buy Sunderland tickets, man. I don't want to have to do all the IT work for them, blah, blah, blah. And, that will happen amongst sections of the fan base. And I think to a degree you can say it's justified, because I don't think the communication has been good enough. And, they've been announcing some of these schemes and what have you with incomplete information that then sort of trickles through in dribs and drabs over the forthcoming period of days or whatever. And it's just not quite what you'd expect from a club operating at the level that we are. So, and as Ian said, I think the club are aware of this and they are making moves to try and address these issues and bring the staffing levels up and get everything into a position where we're, this doesn't happen again. But yeah, when that is the backdrop against which this is set, it does feel just a little bit tone deaf to start hawking out the, the hospitality packages while there's other issues that are facing the fan base. But as I say, I don't really blame the club for this because it is, as I say, a necessary evil in modern football. And if it translates into X amount of extra revenue that pays for the wages or the transfer fee of one of the signings that we all desperately want to see come in, then will we be complaining? I think probably not.
Yeah, I mean, Ian, just very quick final word on this before we stop for a break. Is this just something because we've been out of the Premier League for 10 years and now not only are we in the Premier League, but we're qualified for Europe and finished 7th and all of that now the club are trying to go to the next step? Is it just something that as a group of fans we're just not used to? And then we're seeing this going, oh, well, this doesn't seem right, or this doesn't feel right, or calling people clients instead of fans. I mean, is it just something that we've been out of the loop for so long, we're just not used to it?
Well, the world has definitely changed since we were last in the Premier League, back in, was it 2017 when we were relegated? Yeah, it's completely changing. The one thing that I got from the meeting was just how focused the club were on squeezing every penny out of every opportunity, every revenue stream they could, because that is just how you have to operate. That is how elite level football clubs work. And if you don't do that, then you will just get left behind. And I completely understand that and support that. I think that is absolutely what they should be doing. But yeah, it's been a bit of a culture shock, really, because I watched the I don't know why I just decided I wanted to punish myself, but I watched the playoff final episode of Summer Till I Die not long ago, and
Relaxing viewing on an evening.
I felt like I needed something to put me to sleep in a nice kind of calm way one night. So yeah, but honestly, you should go and watch that. Everyone should go and watch that, and just to see where the club was at that point. You see, the shots of Stuart John and Charlie Methven sitting there, surrounded by empty red seats in the posh seats at the top in the Premier Concourse, because basically they were a club that, running club that no one was really interested in at the time, and you just see how the whole setup. You really get a sense of that now, whereas I don't think we necessarily realised at the time, and because you can compare and contrast it to the way things are these days, but. As I say, there's a recognition from the club that there still needs to be an expansion of the infrastructure internally, and that's obviously going to potentially bring some teething problems around things like the ticketing at this point, because we don't maybe have the amount of staff in that we need at this point. So yeah, it's a learning process for everybody, and it is a bit of a culture shock for fans. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. Go on, Andrew.
Just. I agree. As always, I agree with the points everybody's been making so far. Just to follow on from me, and they're saying he'd watched highlights of the playoff final. Last night, I watched highlights of the Carabao Cup because, I'm just that kind of rock and roll fun guy. And some of the names that were mentioned, there was Nathan Bishop and Alex Bass, the two goalkeepers we had. And at one point, you had Callum Styles whipping the ball in for a goal. And that really brought home to me that, the playing side of things has just moved on a million miles from very recent memory. Perhaps we need to just make sure that the off-the-field stuff is moving along at such a pace.
And just slightly on that topic, actually, because it reminded me that I saw that Brian Oviedo had retired. He retired on Sunday, I think. Or did he retire when we're in League One? I can't quite remember which one it was. But anyway, I think that's a good point for us to take a quick break, and we'll be back very soon. And welcome back to Howie the Podcast. And we dealt with all the ticketing news, I think, in the first part. And now I think we need to deal with all of these transfers that are apparently happening, and the majority of them are outgoing. But we'll get into them, maybe in some sort of random order. But we'll start off, and we're going to go to you, Andrew, with this first one, because as we speak, Anthony Patterson is reported to be heading to Wrexham for a medical. And this was according to Simon Jones from the Daily Mail first, when they could pull themselves away from reporting on the boats. And then I think Keith Downey and some others also reported that it was apparently an £8 million fee that we're going to get from Wrexham for Anthony Patterson. But I'm not, it's funny because during this summer, Andrew, I've thought, actually, Anthony Patterson he could well be in the squad to start the season. And all these rumours were going around. And now it's kind of like, actually, I thought he was staying. But it's probably inevitable, really, that he wanted first team football, especially after, going out on loan to Millwall last season.
From his point of view, yeah, you can't blame him at all, can you? He's used to being the number one keeper. He had a good stint of 2 or 3 years where he barely missed a game for Sunderland. So he's probably of a mindset of wanting to play every week. And that's fully understandable. From the club's point of view, though, had a move not happened, it probably wasn't going to be the end of the world. They clearly weren't ostracizing him or pushing him out of the door. He went to America and he got a game. He got a few minutes, didn't he, in the final game of the American tour? I think he came on at Wrexham. And I think he might have even been given the captain's armband. If I've made that up, I apologise. But certainly the club had no issue with him. They weren't bombing him out, but if a deal was to materialise that was to suit all parties, Sunderland weren't going to stand in his way. Wrexham looked to be a pretty ambitious club, so from their point of view, they're getting a goalkeeper who's more than good enough for the Championship. I can see why they want to bring him in. £8 million, if that figure's to be believed, I think represents good value for us as well. We can probably put that money to good use. And if he goes, and like you say, by the time people are listening to this, Chris, it might have already been signed, sealed and delivered. I'll wish him all the best, because whilst Ian's watching his replays of the playoff final we lost, Patterson was tremendous in the 2 that we won and has been a big character at the club, a big part of our success. And I wouldn't be surprised if he goes up with Wrexham and makes a career for himself in the top flight eventually.
Yeah. I mean, Jonny, Anthony Patterson, 26 years old, 2 years left on his contract. Is £8 million about what you would have expected? Or is it the fact that maybe he's going to the Championship that we're maybe getting that sort of fee instead of double figures?
Yeah, it's a weird one, to be honest, because the Championship is going a bit wild for transfer fees, it feels like, over the past few years. I mean, especially this summer, you look at the keeper that Middlesbrough have signed, that Radek Vitek lad, I think they got him from Man United. It's 7 million rising to 14 million was the fee that I saw reported for that. Now, admittedly, this lad, he's had time on loan in the Championship, so they're not just signing a fresh-faced academy kid who's never played senior football or whatever, but still, like, up to 14 million for a keeper in the second tier feels like a lot of money to me. So with that as the comparison, I almost feel like 8 million for Patterson's reasonably cheap. As Andrew said, the bloke was man of the match at Wembley in the playoff final when we got promoted, so he's quite clearly good enough for any Championship club that's chasing promotion. You can argue whether he's able to step up into the Premier League, but I think he's pretty unquestionably proven that he is at least good enough for top end Championship. So yeah, I don't actually know how I feel about it, to be honest, because I think if you'd said to us at the start of the summer, we'll get 8 million for Patterson, by the way, I'd have said, excellent, great deal, that. He'll get away and play football somewhere, we get a bit of money, everyone's happy. But yeah, maybe we do feel a bit hard done by not to have got double figures now. But look, at the end of the day, I think it was a transfer that we all knew was going to happen at some point this summer. Not Wrexham specifically, but Patterson to move on. And I mean, even then, I'm saying that about Wrexham. I think that's been reported for weeks at this point. That's kind of been a bit on again, off again. So yeah, it's no great surprise that he's gone. I think it's a good move for him, and probably a good move for the club, especially when you think that we might get onto this, but Adingra, I think the club may have been counting on getting some money in for him that may not necessarily be happening now this summer. So with that in mind, not that we needed the money, but I think it's always good to to get a few quid in for somebody who's not going to play, and then you can reinvest that in people who will. So yeah, I think it's a good move for all concerned.
Yeah, everyone who's listening might already know how all this played out, but as we're reading, one of the things that might come into play, Ian, is and I'm trying to say the Ipswich Town goalkeeper, Alex Palmer, because in the last 48 hours when we're recording, he's been linked with Wrexham for half the price of Patterson almost. And then we've been linked with Alex Palmer to replace Patterson. So potentially, if the Patterson thing doesn't maybe come through, maybe Palmer might be a Wrexham player, and we've still got Patterson, or Patterson goes to Wrexham, and we've got Alex Palmer. So, like I said, this might all play out over the next 24 hours. But what would you think if Alex Palmer came in, 30-year-old goalkeeper, and of course we've got Elborg on the books, and whether he goes out on loan to get game time is another discussion. But how would you think if it all played out like that?
The old goalkeeping merry-go-round in action, yeah. It's funny, isn't it? Because I've always quite liked Alex Palmer. I think as a goalkeeper, he's probably of a similar standard to Anthony Patterson. I mean, yeah, as it goes, I mean, I think £8 million quid's a great deal for him. If you're comparing it to Visek, who swept the supporters awards at Bristol City last season, he was great for them. So to be kind of compared alongside him, I think is actually it's quite favourable. Well, I would say for Anthony Patterson, just on him, it's a great move for him. But Phil Parkinson being your manager, it's a bit like going to work for Twitter and finding out that Adam Pearson or Geordie Josh is your manager. It's that kind of that sort of level of things, really. But yeah, I think if it works at a financial level for the club to get Alex Palmer in and get Anthony Patterson out, and clearly it probably would do, then I think, yeah, we should go for this. It comes back to what I was saying just earlier on there about squeezing every last penny out of every revenue stream or every transfer that you can, and it seems like it's the fee that we wanted for Patterson, and it's a fee I'm sure that it should be happy to take for Palmer as well. So and how much game time is Palmer going to get with us? Really, it's all going to be a bit. We're all still trying to work out this European squad situation and all that. So who knows what that would be? But he was decent at West Brom, so I'm perfectly okay with it all. Really.
Yeah, looking at, he's a decent goalkeeper, but he has spent most of his career either out on loan or on the bench. So maybe he's quite open to another move like that. But moving on, we have been reported quite extensively over the last week or so with a bid for Matali from Toulouse, left back. Apparently a good attacking left back. I know Gav did a podcast talking to someone about him. That was around the 30 million euros mark. But apparently, Andrew, AC Milan have joined the race. And when I got a cryptic message this morning, we're saying AC Milan were after Meth. I didn't think Charlie Methven was going to Italy to maybe look at which clubs he could take over there. But Toulouse are apparently holding out for more money, and we're potentially still in pole position. But clearly there's a lot of interest in him, and you wouldn't be surprised if maybe we look elsewhere.
Yeah, that's very possible now. I will just give a warning. That's 2 mentions now of Charlie Methven. I don't think we're allowed to talk about him anymore. We're meant to be looking ahead to a positive new season.
Well, something bad happens if you say his name 3 times, is it?
Yeah. Yeah, that blooming playoff final when we lost in the last minute. That was bad, dear me. You're always cautious. Is somebody trying to put pressure on Sunderland to speed up and make the deal happen by throwing in the name of another club? But if you're of a more positive frame of mind, you could say, well, of course there's going to be other big name clubs after a player like that. Sunderland want to be buying the best new talent, the prospects, and they're going to have to compete and make these targets feel like we're the best choice for them. So, are Milan involved or not? I doubt we'll know for sure. But I'm okay with the situation. I'm relaxed with it. How many times have we had these conversations before? Sunderland are comfortable with their appraisals of players and their estimations of them. They're not going to spend an extra few million just to make a deal happen. Because if Natali's not going to be the one, we'll have other players that we've looked at extensively and we'll be confident that they can come and do a similar job. It really leaves me confused when you see people saying things like, oh, just pay the extra few million. Let's just get the deal done. We can't afford to do that anymore. We've got to be strict and sensible with our money. As being said before, the club are squeezing the supporter base for every penny, and we understand why they have to do that. You'd be devastated, though, if you then saw that extra revenue just being chucked up against the wall just because the club can't be patient or they haven't scouted properly to get a suitable player in for a suitable price. Whether this particular deal happens, I don't know. I hope it does because he sounds like a promising player. We just all need to stay calm, though, and remember in these big money transfers, there's going to be all sorts of politics and there's going to be that soap opera element to it. And just because something's being reported in the press, that might not actually be what the club are thinking at that moment in time.
Yeah.
We need
Just
to
looking at-
we need sorry
Go on, Ian.
sorry, I'm just going to jump in there. We need to be taking we need to be basically learning from what's happening up the road around these things and how these things are conducted. Because frankly, these European clubs take a damn liberty when it comes to trying to charge us money because they know we've got it. And when I saw this thing, the Natalia links, first of all, the one thing that sprung into my head was bidding war. That's what they want. And you know what? Hey, if I was to lose, I'd be doing exactly the same thing. But when you're on the other side of it, then you can just you can just swivel. If I'm honest with you, and we know because we have to every pound is a prisoner to this football club, just like everybody else. We know that we have valuations of players, and we know what we'll be prepared to go to, and we will be prepared to not go above a certain amount. Years and years ago, just to diverge a little bit from football to house buying, we put an offer in a house years ago and got in this blinking bidding war with this other couple who were trying to buy it, and I was taking phone calls back and forth from the estate agents. And they kept on putting it up by £1,000, and then there's another £1,000, and then it went up by £2,000. And we had a target in mind, right? This is as maximum we can go to. And we got to that point, and I said, nah, we're not going any further than that. And the estate agent was caught a bit sort of off guard. He was like, oh, really? I was like, well, yeah, I'm not paying any more than that. And that's exactly what I want to see from Flo Gazolfi and Louis Dreyfus and Sartori. They need to know exactly how much he's worth, and that's it. We ain't going any further than that. And then we just need to move swiftly on because, the clock is ticking right now. It's the 10th of August as we record this. So, there's only a few weeks left, and we do probably need a bit of cover in that area, sort of a bit of cover. We do need somebody to come in who's going to take over for Ronaldo full time within the next year or so. So, yeah, but we have a plan. We have a plan, and I'm confident about that.
Yeah, well, go on, Andrew.
I was just, I think, yeah, sorry, Chris. Sorry, I didn't mean to be rude there. Most of the time when I cut over you, I'm meaning to be rude. But on that occasion, I didn't mean to be.
Just as long as it's something interesting, Andrew.
Oh, move on then. No, Ian's right. We need to have a plan. The thing is, though, we're not just buying one house. We're buying 2 or 3 players potentially. So I fully understand why Ian had a limit. But Sunderland, there's even more reason because, it's only an extra couple of million on the left back. Well, if we apply that to 2 or 3 other players, that's suddenly 10, 15 million gone that we weren't expecting to pay. And then you can't get that 4th signing, or then the finances aren't as good as you thought they were to be. So it isn't just this deal that the club are looking at. It's in the wider context of the whole transfer market. And I'd love it if we were signing players every day. It was fantastic last summer, but that's not the position we're in. and we just have to accept that and be patient.
Yeah. To be fair, for clubs like Toulouse, if Premier League clubs knocking with the money that the Premier League get, I'd be tempted to squeeze every penny out of a Premier League club as well. But Jonny, just on that left back conversation, there's also been links with Josh Doig and the Daily Record from Sassuolo in Italy. Apparently, Marseille and Olympiacos are also tracking him. But it was a bit like last season where we were seeing the positions that we were constantly linked with that eventually actually came true. And it does seem like left backs this summer's, where all the links seem to be, doesn't it?
Yeah, left back's this summer's keeper. Last summer we had, I forget the name, Marcin Bulka, the lad who went to Saudi in the end. And, we kind of rattled through a couple of the candidates who maybe were at the top of our list before we ended up signing Robin Roofs. And just look how that went, by the way. If anyone's worried about the idea of us getting linked with players and maybe getting rebuffed or whatever and having to move on to other targets, just remember last summer that Roofs wasn't our number one target, and look how good he is. So there's nothing to suggest that whether we sign Metterly, whether we sign Doig, whether we sign somebody completely different who none of us have heard of yet and hasn't been linked, as Ian said, there's clearly a plan in place. And if there's any football club in the country that's earned a bit of trust over the recruitment dealings recently, it's Sunderland, which, again, it kind of strikes back to that thing of us, maybe as a fan base, we just don't know how to deal with that. We're not used to being in a position where we can trust the club, but we can. And whether we end up signing, like I said, one of these two or somebody different, I agree, Chris, that it's pretty clear this is, if not number one priority for the club recruitment wise, then it's up there, isn't it? Because we don't tend to hear a lot about many of our signings these days until such time as things are about to, actually get sealed and delivered. We saw that, even with Thomas Meunier earlier this summer, that kind of just all of a sudden it came out that, suddenly Sunderland's interested in him, and then bang, a couple of days later he's through the door. So yeah, I think the fact that we've heard so much and there's been all this chatter about these transfers as if they're quite close, I think that tells you no smoke without fire. The club are clearly trying to sign a left back, and if you trust them, then you'll trust them to get it done one way or another before the end of the summer, and that's the position I'm in. I understand that there's a lot of people who are getting a bit fidgety and a bit restless, and obviously we were never going to have a summer like last summer, but maybe some people just thinking, oh, well, we're in Europe now, and surely that opens more doors, and why aren't we being a bit more expansive in the market? But it's not that simple. The football transfers, especially at the top levels of the game, the sums of money involved are eye-watering. The amount of people and intermediaries and agents and, all of these different parties that have to be dealt with before things can happen. And, it's, as much as it's a fast-moving landscape, it can be pretty slow-moving, I think, at other times as well, when there's all this paperwork to get sorted and what have you. So I'm not worried. Sometimes good deals take time, and I'd rather us take our time and make some good deals rather than rush in blindly and maybe get a couple of players in a couple of weeks earlier just for the sake of the first month of the season. Because, you don't sign a player for Ipswich away. You sign a player for a period of years, and I'm more bothered about what's going to happen in that period of years that we sign them for rather than the first 5 games of the season. So, yeah, I'm completely relaxed about it. I think whatever will happen. And come the end of the window, we'll be a better squad than we were when we started. And that's all you can ask for.
Yeah. Well, the last one, actually, in terms of links, before we get on to some outgoing ones, Ian, links, they persist with Sporting's Jenny Katamo. I'm going to say Katamo, because if I say Katamo, it sounds a bit too much like a former central midfielder, and I'm not sure I'm quite comfortable with that. But we're talking about around the 60 million euro mark, and it seemed to go away a few days ago, but now it's kind of coming back. Is this the type of player you'd expect us to be going for this summer?
Just on Catamol, I saw him at Gateshead Stadium soft play the other day walking through. I was there with my little lad, and he walked through with all the team, and I eyeballed him and I went, there you go, Road. There he is. 50k a week he was on in League One. My little lad, he was 2 at the time, weren't you joking? That's his name. Anyway, Catamo, no, thanks for the League One memories, Lee. I'm only joking. So Catamo, it does make me feel slightly slightly nervous seeing these kind of fees being banded around for these players. Like, we've been linked with 50 million, 60 million. How much? It's kind of what we touched on last week. I'm not concerned about the number of the lack of signings. I'm concerned about the fact that we get the few signings we're going to make right. And if you're going to spending a huge amount on a player, you've got to make sure that they're right. And they're right for this club, they're the right character, they're obviously the right, they fit in with the style of play that the team wants to play, all that sort of thing. But it comes back to the fact you've got to trust the recruitment guys, really. You've got to understand that these people know exactly what they're looking for and are going to be quite targeted and prescriptive in terms of what they want. So they obviously know that he's the right guy, or one of the right guys. And if it's not him, it will be somebody else. But I'm just, oh God, it just does introduce a lot of jeopardy when you see these fees. That's my main concern, really. But we need someone of his profile in. So if it's not going to be him, then you think it'll be somebody else, certainly.
Yeah, I was nodding along there, Ian, because I remember going into cold sweats and panicking when we signed Brett Angel for 750,000. Panicking that wouldn't work, and funny enough, I was right. But let's go on in outgoings. Andrew, Sky Sports News are reporting that Leo Hjelde is off to Belgium with Mechelen, I think it's pronounced. Of course, he was on loan Sheffield United last season. He's in the last year of his contract. Again, might have been a hint that he might have stuck around as a squad player, but I think he was always on the list of players would probably move on, wouldn't it?
That list is getting shorter by the minute. It seems this morning. There's a few that we'll go on to talk about. I've got no problem with Leo Hjelde. He seemed like a really popular part of the squad behind the scenes, but there's a player I wasn't convinced he was going to be capable of moving up to the Premier League with us and being part of things going forward. So if this is a decent club for him and we can, again, get a few more pennies in, we're all happy. Wish him all the best.
Yeah. And he will be the answer to a future quiz question about that substitution in the playoff final after that goal, won't he? But Jonny, quickfire, in terms of quickfire departures, Masuaku apparently is signing for Konyaspor in Turkey. Some of the reports say there's a deal between the clubs, which I don't really get. I'm assuming that now he's a free agent. It's got nothing to do with us.
Who cares? I hate to be so dismissive, but like Masuaku's not good enough. He wasn't good enough last season. He was always going to leave. The club are probably not going to get any money.
Isn't he under contract? I thought he was under contract. I'm sure he's come back to the training ground.
Yeah,
I've been proven wrong.
No, I saw he was training with us, but I know that he. I thought basically he was one of those that we released, but I could well be wrong. But like you said,
I could be the one that's wrong. I'm not sure.
But it is bizarre. Like I said, some of the reports do say that there's a deal between the clubs. But another one from Sky Sports News, Ian, is Barr is signing for Peterborough. I think thinking back to Barr during the championship seasons, it was really strange at one point because the club seemed to be really pushing him, thinking he's got it and he's going to make it at some point. And because some of us were, I remember on pods at the time, we were kind of going, how's he keep popping up in the team? And it was a bit of a head scratcher, but it hasn't worked out in the end, has it?
No, it's not worked out at all for him, sadly. It's probably a really good example of just how far this club has progressed over the last couple of years, that he's been not just left behind, but he is like, he has fallen off the back of the lorry and is currently in the dust, and I feel a bit sorry for him in that sense, but I also, got the impression as a personality, it kind of felt like because he had come to us, he'd felt like a kind of completed professional football at the age of like 20, 21. And that's obviously not the case, because you need to constantly keep your foot to the floor when you're a professional footballer, as someone like Luke O'Neill will tell you. I think actually, though, having said that, though, his move to Peterborough is quite a good one, because Luke Williams will be his manager, and he was the former Swansea City manager who became very, I think he went viral because he was photographed working at Bristol. Was it Bristol Airport after he got sacked by Swansea, because he just basically had, a great work ethic, wanted any job. And he was seen sort of given sort of old ladies transport across the airport. He couldn't carry their luggage and all that sort of thing. So if he needs to work with somebody who has a good work ethic, then that is absolutely, the right club for him. Now I know that Malk is a Peterborough, one of Roker reports. Finest is one of a Peterborough native. Well, Peterborough native, is he? I don't know whether you are, Malk. Sorry, but you certainly live near Peterborough, so I'll be careful what I say about the place here. But having spent quite a lot of time working in Peterborough, it's a bit of a culture shock to people like Abdullah Bar, I imagine, who've coming from France and latterly Sunderland. It's an interesting place to go, and I think he will sink or swim there. Certainly, London Road's a very old school stadium, and it's no stadium of light and that sort of thing. And the most interesting thing about London Road is that Darren McAnthony has El Presidente on the sign next to his parking spot, which is literally outside the front door. So when I went to have a look at London Road, I parked in it when I was there for work, and did a few donuts just to annoy him. But yeah, it'll be interesting for Bar going there. I'll be he's one of those lads, I will follow his career closely. Like Jason Bennett left and kind of forgotten about him, but I will follow him to see how he gets on. And I hope he does well, to be fair, because he, there is, as they say, a player in there.
It is funny that we look upon that championship side with a bit of affection, even though they weren't great, whereas the previous championship side before that, we look at it with probably pure hatred for quite a lot of them. But almost to the last one, Andrew, Alan Brown. There's a couple of stories circulating about Alan Brown that apparently Preston were looking at him. There's another one that says we're quite happy to keep him as a squad player for the season ahead. He's played quite a lot in pre-season, so it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. Do you reckon he'll stick around and be a Sunderland player and play a few games, or do you reckon he'll be off?
I think he'll be off, but a bit like what we were saying about Patterson before, the club aren't, shoving him out the door. They haven't given his parking space in the training ground to somebody else, for example. He's still welcome. He's still welcome. Just touching on Abdullah Bar quickly. You're talking about how his kind of star has fallen and he went off a cliff. According to Wikipedia, in one season in the Championship, he made 27 appearances. The following season, he made 39 appearances for Sunderland. And then nothing since then.
I remember like I said, the club, there was one point under Mowbray where it was almost like, right, we'll shoehorn him in up front for a bit. It will just get him in the starting 11. And we kept saying, well, he didn't really do enough last week to justify another game, but he kept getting in the starting 11. And we were kind of assuming it was someone upstairs saying, no, keep playing him.
Yeah, it's a peculiar one, because in the last 12 months or so, I mean, Peterborough are now signing a player who hasn't had any football in about 12 months, from what I can remember.
Sorry, I'm just looking at it. He's played 66 games for Sunderland. No.
Quite a lot of those you've probably erased from your memory, though, considering they happened in 23-24.
Yeah.
Oh, someone's. This is like when someone signs for the club, and they're just they edit the Wikipedia page before it's happened. That I'm not having that. He's never played 66 games for us.
It's an odd one, and to be fair, I think he's done well to get a club of that level, given how much his career has fallen. Maybe there's things behind the scenes we don't know about, but yeah, that the whole story of Abdullah Bar's a bit of an odd one.
We'll always have Norwich away, though.
Of course,
remember that.
Of course,
yes. That lovely miss it shot into the corner.
He scored a bizarre header for us at home on a midweek evening game where I think the ball spun up and his leap was brilliant. He had the technical ability, he had the athleticism. Anyway, Alan Brown. Sorry, I've been distracted there. Alan Brown there, I think, is a different point, because Barr had no future with Sunderland whatsoever, whereas Brown is in this kind of limbo where you wouldn't be that staggered if he was involved in a couple of cup games or what have you. Whenever you see the footage of the training ground, he's part of it. The other players are happy to see him. I mean, Granit Xhaka was over the moon to see him when he came back and was giving him one of those big handshakes they all like to do. So it might be a case of, again, if Preston or whoever comes together with a decent offer, we'll let you go, but there's a place for you here if you want it. He's had a few games in pre-season. He's been involved. I'm at no point suggesting that he's going to be like a regular starter in the Premier League, but if he does the same type of job as Simon Moore and he's a wise head around the place, and on top of that, he can play a few minutes in a couple of cup ties, is it the end of the world? I mean, he's an international. It's not like he's a complete joker. He could do half a job for us.
Well, I had to quickly look there after Ian said that about Abdullah Bar. He actually made 74 appearances for Sunderland in total. 41 of those as a substitute. So that means he started
I'm not
30.
having that. I'm not having. I've slipped into a parallel universe here. There's no way that he's made 71 appearances for us.
He started 33 games in that case. And in those 33 games he started, he was substituted 29 times.
Do you know what it is, right? So when we were looking at
four full games.
So when I was looking at this, I thought, well, I better just make a few notes for this. I wrote down, and I'll read this. I wrote down here, right? I said, a succession of managers felt he wasn't right, and the club outstripped him. So my train of thought there is that managers have looked at him and thought, no, he's not playing. Turns out they're all playing him. Unbelievable.
Everywhere.
I just, honestly, I'm absolutely shocked by that. There's a piece in there, isn't it, for, players who played much more for your club than you realise they did. And he's right at the top there for me.
That puts him about 20 or 30 appearances off Defoe in terms of how much they played for us. I wonder who had a bigger impact on Sunderland, Abdullah Bar or Jermaine Defoe. Answers on a postcard.
If this episode doesn't tell us to just be patient and not worry, I don't know what will, because, Abdullah Bar, Callum Styles, some of the names who were playing for us very recently, if we need to wait another week before signing some international quality left back, I think we can all, just hold on for a second.
He was also an unused substitute on 20 occasions, so he was in the matchday squad 94 times. Well, anyway,
it's never too late to follow your dreams, guys. It's never too late.
Oh, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go out and kick the footy about after this in the background and see if I can still get fit for Sunderland next season. And of course he's joining Harrison Jones there at Peterborough, so they're collecting a few skillful players there. Just the last one, gents, because I think we're done with. There's a couple more. Ian Paveda, we're going to mention he's moved clubs again. That was big Sunderland news, of course. Under 21 fixtures have been released as well, so people could look at those. But just to round us off, and I'll start with you, Jonny. First home game in pre-season. Do you think it's a good thing that we end pre-season with a home game?
No, why'd you ask us this? Because now I'm going to sound proper negative. No, I hate them, I hate these home friendlies because I don't know what it is, but just generally as a club, like all of us included, none of us seem to be able to get them right. No one turns up. The ground's half empty. Everyone's packed into the same stand. Like, there's no atmosphere. But then you look at some of the pre-season friendlies, like, I'm sure plenty of people listening are the same. You just get really bored when there's no football happening. So you're like, I'll just tune in to see what's happening in some, Arsenal's friendlies or Liverpool or whatever. And across Europe, there seems to be sold-out friendlies and big crowds and there's people there. And then when we play one, there's 14 people, a dog. You can hear everyone's individual conversations on the live stream.
On Saturday, it wasn't it? Or basically a sellout.
There's some good videos going around the Sunderland fans.
Yeah, exactly. There's a perfect comparison.
It's absolutely mental, isn't it? Because, I went to Rayo Vallecano at the stadium last season, and there was probably about 63 people there, and we got humped 3-0. And genuinely, the most remarkable moment of the whole day, or the standout moment, was Jared Gillett, the referee, getting his photograph taken and signing autographs with fans at the end. And I thought, that sums you up, doesn't it? You know, not that
Which Sunderland fan wants his autograph as well after he sent that nail off against Borough?
I don't know. You know, I just found it absolutely astonishing.
So,
Really.
so are you in the same boat then, Ian, about the last game being at home?
No, I think they're great. No, I tell you what brings me out in absolute shivers. It's the phrase "Sunderland are opening the East Stand." Like, when you have to specify which stand you're opening, it just reminds me of the Papa John's Trophy, which then reminds me of playing Newcastle under-21s in the Papa John's Trophy, which then reminds me of the fact that they mocked our irrelevance for many, many years. And I end up just, really getting chewed up by that. So I just hate, I joke. I absolutely hate home friendlies now. We peaked many, many years ago when we played, I think it was Juventus at home. And we drew 1-1. I think Darryl Murphy scored the goal for us. And I don't know whether any of you lads were there, but I always remember that game from the ball going into the concourse, and then someone dressed as Spider-Man ran out with it above his head. And that was just like, and I think it was the Keane era, wasn't it? Because we just signed Russell Anderson from Aberdeen and stuff like that.
We were after Kellini, weren't we?
Yeah. And that was a good day. But I think home Sunderland friendlies peaked at that point, and it was kind of downhill after that. And it's never really recovered. And there just isn't the interest there, really. We should just not bother. We'll play it behind closed doors. Who cares?
Well, I'll give Andrew the final one then. Are you looking forward to it, mate?
Well, if I can sort out my ticket account and buy tickets, I'll be going. I'll be looking forward to it. At no point did I think we'd be discussing Russell Anderson ahead of the 2026-27 season.
He's become like an insurance salesman now, something like that. Yeah, completely he's completely like sort of normal job now. Yeah.
Sunderland kicked the stuffing out of him, didn't they?
Where are they now? Featuring Abdullah Bar and Russell Anderson. Also, by the way, Chris, you might want to delay the release of this podcast, because if Peterborough gets second thoughts because we've just trashed Abdullah Bar, we're not going to be very popular.
Well, I think this is already going to be dated, so we don't want to delay it anymore.
There is a weird phenomenon around pre-season games and early rounds of cup ties, because Sunderland's support is brilliant, but for whatever reason, these games just do not attract the attention, and you do get low crowds. I assume the reason the clubs still go ahead with it is either for testing purposes, make sure the turnstiles are all still working and that, or from a player's point of view, it benefits the players to just have a trip back to the stadium and just get used to the surroundings again. Might not be so much of a case this season, but last season, when you're trying to bed in 10, 12, however many players, you probably don't want them rocking up at the Stadium of Light against West Ham and them not even knowing where the changing rooms are. So there must be some sort of reason to these games, and it's certainly attractive opposition this weekend. I'm looking forward to seeing the football, but as an occasion, it will feel a bit flat, and it'll feel a million times different to how it was against Chelsea in the last time we were at the Stadium of Light a couple of months ago. So, it's an odd one. It's an odd one, but hey, listen, last time I got a signed photograph with Jared Gillett, so it was it's certainly worth it for me. I've got it framed on the wall there. I'm looking at it now.
Well, on that bombshell, and as Andrew predicted, we have talked for far longer than we had planned, so apologies for that. So I'd just like to say thank you very much once again to Andrew, Jonny and Ian for fantastic answers to all of the questions and all of the news that's come out of Sunderland over the last few days. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thanks again, everyone, for listening. And I'm sure the lads have got you right up for this game at the weekend, because this week, of course, we're going to be building up to our final pre-season friendly at the Stadium of Light, which is going to be a packed house in one stand, according to the lads. And the atmosphere is going to be bubbling as they've all just described. So look out for all of that. We'll have podcasts leading up to all of that. I'm not sure what order they'll be in, but there will be some pods building up to that final game and seeing how Regis Labus is going to set up in that final pre-season friendly. So look out for all of that. But from us, it's bye for now.